The Galactic Council had long held power over the universe. For centuries, they governed the stars, making decisions for the countless races spread across the galaxy. Their rule was unchallenged, and they prided themselves on their diplomatic skills, keeping peace through treaties and alliances. But today, something had changed. Something new and powerful was on the horizon. In the heart of the Council's massive headquarters, high above a distant planet, the Council members gathered for their routine meeting. The room was vast, filled with representatives from all corners of the galaxy, each species more alien than the last. They discussed matters of trade, security, and alliances. The usual political chatter echoed through the chamber, but there was a sense of unease in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. A young officer, dressed in the uniform of the Galactic Security Forces, rushed into the room. His face was pale, his breath quick. He had news that could change everything. "Counselors, please," he exclaimed, trying to steady his voice. "A new force has appeared in our sector. It doesn't match anything we've seen before." The counselors paused their discussions. Murmurs of confusion spread quickly across the room. One of the older members, a tall, reptilian figure, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean? Another fleet? Another empire?" The officer hesitated before answering, his words heavy with disbelief. "No, this is something else. It's a warship, a single warship. But it's massive, bigger than anything in our records. And it's moving directly toward us." The room fell silent. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. A warship, just one ship. It didn't make sense. The Galactic Council had always been careful to keep such threats at bay. No single race could stand against their united force. But then, the officer's next words struck a chord of fear. "The ship has just entered our galaxy. Its technology. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." The old counselor raised his hand, signaling for calm. "What's their origin? Who are they?" The officer swallowed hard, the tension in the room growing thicker. "We don't know, counselor. But the ship, it's human-made." There was a moment of stunned silence. Humanity. The humans had only recently begun exploring space, and the council had dismissed them as insignificant. Their presence in the galaxy had been little more than a curiosity. No one had taken them seriously. But now, this single human warship had appeared from a region no one had even mapped. The older counselor's voice was low, but sharp. "Are you saying we are being threatened by humans?" The officer nodded, his face pale with fear. "Yes, counselor. They're not asking for permission. They're demanding an audience." A chill swept through the room as the realization hit. The Galactic Council, the once unchallenged rulers of the galaxy, now had to deal with a force they had underestimated. One human ship had come to their doorstep, and it wasn't here to negotiate. It had come to make a statement. The counselors exchanged nervous glances. It was clear now that humanity was no longer just a curiosity. They were a force to be reckoned with. And as the massive warship drew closer, the council knew they would have to face this new power head-on. What they didn't know yet was that the ship wasn't coming to negotiate. It was coming to show them just how powerless they had become. The warship loomed over the galaxy like a giant shadow. For days, it had been moving steadily toward the heart of the Galactic Council's domain. It was unlike any ship the Council had ever seen. No one had expected such a powerful force to come from humanity, especially not with so little warning. Yet, here it was, approaching quickly, with no intention of stopping. Inside the Council's main chamber, the members were still in a state of shock. They had never faced anything like this before. The human ship had ignored every attempt to communicate, its massive presence in their sector a clear sign of dominance. The once confident leaders of the council were now uncertain, whispering to each other in a panic. "We need to act now," said a tall, furrowed-faced counselor, his voice shaky. "This human ship isn't waiting for us to decide. They're coming for us." The others were not so quick to respond. The vast majority of council members were accustomed to negotiating, to making deals with alien species across the galaxy. They had spent centuries avoiding conflict, and most of them believed that violence was something that could always be avoided. But not this time. An emergency meeting was called, and the members of the council gathered again, this time with urgency. They had no idea what humanity wanted, but one thing was clear: the ship was powerful, and it wasn't slowing down. The head of the council, an ancient wise alien who had seen countless leaders come and go, stood at the front, his usual calm demeanor gone. His voice echoed in the chamber. "We must prepare for what's to come. Send out our best fleets. Let us show them we are not to be taken lightly." As the council members discussed what to do, a voice interrupted them. It was the voice of a young, ambitious counselor who had always been more open-minded about humanity. "Wait," the young counselor said, standing up from his seat. "We need to think this through. We don't know what they want. We don't know if they're here to conquer or negotiate. We shouldn't act rashly." His words fell on deaf ears. The older council members, still shaken by the sudden arrival of this alien ship, were not willing to take any chances. They ordered the immediate deployment of a few smaller fleets, hoping to put on a show of strength to intimidate the human warship into turning away. But it was clear that no one truly believed it would work. Meanwhile, outside the council's domain, the human warship made its final approach. Its massive form filled the space between the stars, a sight so terrifying that even the most seasoned alien commanders were left in awe. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and it radiated power. The council's fleets, newly dispatched, began to form a defensive perimeter. They moved in with precision, hoping to prevent the warship from crossing into the heart of the council's space. But when they tried to communicate, there was no response. The human warship was silent, as if it were simply observing them. The tension in the galaxy was building to a breaking point. Then, without warning, the warship made its move. It activated its engines, sending out a pulse of energy that sent the council's fleets scrambling. It was an unmistakable demonstration of power, a warning that humanity was not to be underestimated. Back in the council's chamber, panic spread like wildfire. Some members stood up, shouting for their fleets to attack. But it was too late. The human ship had made its presence known, and the question now was whether the Galactic Council was ready to face the consequences of their underestimation of humanity. The human warship moved effortlessly through the stars, a dark giant that seemed to swallow up the light around it. Its power was undeniable, and it was heading straight for the Galactic Council's domain. The Council's fleets, though formidable, were no match for the raw might of the human ship. Despite their best efforts to organize and stand their ground, they found themselves dwarfed by the overwhelming force that had suddenly appeared in their galaxy. Inside the warship, Captain Mark Reed stood on the bridge, watching as the vastness of space unfolded before him. The ship was massive, built for one purpose: to show the galaxy that humanity would no longer remain in the shadows. His hands rested on the console, and his eyes were steady as he gazed at the distant lights of the council's fleets. "Captain," a voice called from behind him. It was Lieutenant Thompson, his second in command. "The council's fleets are trying to form a defensive perimeter. They're sending signals, asking for communication." Reed remained silent for a moment, staring out into space. He knew they were watching. He knew they were afraid. But it didn't matter. Humanity had come too far to be ignored anymore. "Ignore their requests," Reed ordered calmly. "We don't have time for negotiations. They'll either accept what's coming or they won't. Prepare the ship for a demonstration." The crew moved quickly, following orders without hesitation. The warship's engines hummed as it powered up, and its weapon systems began to glow with deadly intent. A single shot from this ship could take down entire fleets, and the captain wasn't about to waste time. Meanwhile, the council's leaders were panicking. Their last line of defense was crumbling. They had never seen anything like this. Alien species from across the galaxy had come to depend on the council for leadership and protection. But now, humanity was threatening everything they had built. Councillor Varric, one of the senior members, slammed his fist on the table in frustration. We can't just let them walk over us. We have to respond, or we'll lose everything. But even as he spoke, it became clear that their options were limited. They were dealing with a race that had mastered technology far beyond anything they had imagined. And worse, they were led by a human who showed no fear, no hesitation. The warship was not only powerful but strategic, its every move calculated to send a message. Humanity would not ask for permission anymore. The Council's ships, now in a disorganized mess, attempted to surround the human warship. But the humans weren't interested in a battle. They were simply making their presence known. Captain Reed activated the warship's weaponry, sending a single pulse of energy that blasted through the space around them. The power of the shot was unlike anything the Council's ships had ever experienced. It sent shockwaves through space, rattling the ships and forcing them to scatter. A few smaller ships were caught in the blast, instantly obliterated. The remaining fleets quickly retreated, realizing the futility of resistance. On the Council's side, leaders were scrambling for answers. Some called for an immediate surrender. Others, more desperate, tried to come up with a plan, but it was too late. The humans had already proven their strength. Back on the human warship, Captain Reed's voice echoed through the comms. "This is your last chance, Council. We've shown you what we're capable of. Now it's time to decide whether you stand with us or against us." The message was clear. Humanity had come to dominate, and there was no turning back. The Galactic Council could either accept this new reality or face the consequences of their failure to recognize humanity's power. As the human warship's pulse shot through space, sending shockwaves across the galaxy, the once unshakable Galactic Council began to fracture. The immense power displayed was unlike anything they had ever seen. Their fleets, once proud symbols of the Council's authority, had scattered in fear, unable to withstand the overwhelming strength of humanity's weaponry. The warship, now in the heart of Council-controlled space, hovered like a giant predator surveying its prey. It was an unmistakable sign to the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they were not here to negotiate. In the Council's command center, panic had replaced the usual calm. The members of the Council, once so confident in their superiority, now sat in silence. The warship had crippled their best defenses with a single strike. They had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated the sheer will of the human race. Councillor Jarek, an older member known for his cold pragmatism, spoke first. His voice trembled despite his best efforts to remain composed. "We've made a grave mistake. The humans, they're not like any species we've dealt with. They don't want to negotiate. They want control." His words hit like a cold wave, sending ripples of uncertainty through the room. A few younger councillors, who had once dismissed humanity as a minor threat, now sat in stunned silence, realizing just how wrong they had been. Councillor Varek, the leader of the Council's military arm, stood up, his face flushed with frustration. "We can't let them do this. We have to act. We still have fleets left. We can strike back before they take complete control." But even as he spoke, the reality of the situation was settling in. The fleets that remained were scattered and disorganized. They were no match for the human warship, which was steadily making its way through their most secure sectors without resistance. Across the galaxy, news of the human warship's arrival was spreading like wildfire. Lesser species, many of whom had lived under the Council's rule for centuries, began to take notice. The once feared Galactic Council, known for its diplomatic and military strength, was now on the verge of collapse. Some began to question whether the Council could still protect them. Others, sensing an opportunity, began to make plans of their own. A small fleet from the planet Saros, a neutral system, immediately approached the human warship. The Ictarians had long been wary of the Council's power, and with the Council now on the defensive, they saw a chance to secure a better future for themselves. The human warship's message, broadcast across the stars, was clear: join us or be left behind. Back in the Council's command center, Varek was pacing, his mind racing for answers. We need to act now. We can't let this continue. Counselor Rillen, an alien known for his wisdom, shook his head slowly. Varric, you don't understand. We're not in control anymore. The humans don't need us. They've shown us what they're capable of. And now the galaxy will follow them, not us. Rillen's words were a bitter pill, but they rang true. Fear had spread throughout the Council's ranks. The sense of invincibility they once held was shattered. Humanity had proven that they weren't just a small race to be ignored. They were a new force to be reckoned with, and the Council was powerless to stop them. As Varric watched the screens, seeing more fleets retreat in defeat, a new reality began to set in. The Council's reign was over. Humanity had come to take its place. The galaxy was about to change forever. The atmosphere in the Galactic Council's command chamber was tense. Counselors stood in small groups, speaking in hurried whispers, trying to make sense of the situation. The once confident leaders, who had ruled the galaxy for centuries, now faced a harsh reality. Their power was slipping away, and humanity was the cause. The human warship had proven itself to be an unstoppable force, and the Council's fleets were no match for it. Despite their best efforts to reorganize, the reality of their vulnerability was sinking in. The warship had already shown what it could do. One strike, and entire fleets had been obliterated. It had swept through their defenses like a storm, leaving nothing in its wake. Counselor Varric, who had once been so sure of the Council's dominance, now found himself struggling to keep his composure. He had been the one to propose military action, and now he was seeing just how wrong he had been. "We need to do something," Varric shouted, slamming his fist onto the table. His frustration was clear, but his voice cracked with uncertainty. "We can't let this go on. The humans, they are taking everything from us." But as he spoke, Counselor Rillen's calm voice cut through the chaos. "We are not in control anymore, Varric. The humans have shown us their strength. We have no choice but to decide how to proceed, and we must do it quickly." The room grew quiet as all eyes turned to Rillen. He was known for his wisdom and ability to see things clearly, and his words carried weight, but even his calm demeanor couldn't mask the fear that was now spreading across the Council. "We must face the truth," Rillen continued, his voice steady but somber. "The Galactic Council no longer commands the respect it once did. The humans are here to dominate, and there is nothing we can do to stop them. It's time we make a decision. Do we resist and face our annihilation, or do we join them and seek a new path forward?" The question hung in the air, and for the first time, the counselors truly understood the gravity of the situation. Their once proud civilization was crumbling, and the future of the galaxy was uncertain. Some wanted to resist, to fight back against the humans, and try to reclaim their former power. Others, more pragmatic, realized that resistance would be futile. Counselor Jarek, who had long been skeptical of the Council's approach, spoke up. "We've already seen what happens when we resist. Our fleets are in ruins, and our allies are abandoning us. If we don't align with the humans, we risk losing everything. I vote that we enter negotiations with them." A murmur spread through the room as the counselors exchanged glances. It was clear that many shared Jarek's opinion. Their options were dwindling, and humanity was not just a threat. It was now their only hope for survival. Varric, still unwilling to give up, clenched his fists. "But we can't just bow to them. We can't let them think they can rule us." Rillen shook his head. "We're already ruled, Varric. The question now is whether we want to be a part of their future, or whether we want to be destroyed." The Council went quiet as the decision weighed on them. The fear of complete destruction was real, and the fear of what the humans might do to their society was even greater. Finally, after a long pause, Counselor Michael, one of the more diplomatic members, spoke. "I agree with Jarek. We must try to negotiate, for the sake of our people and the future of the galaxy." The decision was made. The Galactic Council would attempt to negotiate with humanity. They had no choice. The warship had made that clear. The council members knew that this new era would not be easy. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity now held the reins. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The council's reign was over, and humanity was the new force to be reckoned with. The decision was made. The Galactic Council had no choice but to reach out to humanity. The fear of total annihilation had overridden any desire for resistance. The once mighty council now stood at the mercy of a single warship and the humans who commanded it. The message was sent. The council's leaders, shaking with uncertainty, agreed to a meeting with the humans aboard their massive warship. They hoped that perhaps, through diplomacy, they could salvage some of their power, or at the very least, negotiate terms for their survival. But as the counselors prepared for the meeting, the human warship did not hesitate. Captain Reed, with his calm but firm leadership, wasted no time in answering their call. He knew the council's position was fragile, and he was in no rush to offer any sympathy. The human ship, having already demonstrated its dominance, was now poised to reshape the galaxy. A small delegation from the Galactic Council arrived at the warship. As they approached, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and fear. The sheer size of the human vessel was overwhelming. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The warship's dark, imposing form hovered in space, its weapon systems silently watching over the approaching ships. Inside the warship, Captain Reed and his officers stood, waiting. The atmosphere in the command center was calm but tense. They had made it clear that they would not be taking any chances. The council had no power left, and they knew it. But humanity had come to dominate, and the captain was prepared to negotiate on their terms. The counselors were escorted onto the bridge of the warship. The moment they stepped aboard, they were met with a cold reception. The human soldiers, standing at attention, looked at them with silent judgment. The council members, used to being in control, now felt small and insignificant in the presence of these humans. Captain Reed stood at the front, his gaze unwavering as the counselors filed in. He didn't need to say much. His mere presence spoke volumes. The council members knew that they were no longer the ones in charge. Humanity had taken that role, and they were now guests in the very space they had once ruled. "Welcome," Captain Reed said flatly, his voice carrying the weight of the situation. "I trust you're ready to discuss the future of this galaxy." The counselors exchanged nervous glances. They had come to plead for mercy, but they were unsure what kind of mercy humanity would offer. They had seen the power of the warship, and now, standing before its captain, they were beginning to understand the true scale of what they faced. "How do you intend to move forward?" asked Counselor Jarek, his voice tentative. "We've been rulers of this galaxy for centuries. You can't expect us to just submit without question." Reed's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're right. I don't expect you to submit. But the era of your rule is over. The question now is, will you align with humanity and become a part of a new order, or will you be left behind? The choice is yours." The counselors fell silent. The weight of the situation was clear. Humanity wasn't just asking for respect. They were demanding it. Captain Reed had no intention of negotiating for the sake of diplomacy. His terms were simple: cooperate or face the consequences. The council had no response. They had never faced such a direct confrontation, and now they were realizing how powerless they truly were. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was the one force capable of reshaping it. As the meeting ended, the counselors left the warship with no answers, but with a deep understanding of their new reality. Humanity had arrived, and their dominance was undeniable. The galaxy would no longer belong to the council. It would belong to humanity, and everyone would have to learn to live with that fact. The galaxy had never known fear quite like this. The once proud Galactic Council, now broken and scrambling, could do little more than watch as humanity's influence spread like wildfire. The warship, an unstoppable force, had forced their hand, and there was no going back. But even as the Council tried to decide what to do next, the ripple effects of humanity's arrival were beginning to shake the very foundations of galactic order. In the Council's chambers, the leaders sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The human warship's terms were clear: either align with them or face the consequences. There was no middle ground, no room for negotiation. For the first time in centuries, the once powerful Galactic Council had to consider surrendering not just their influence, but their control over the entire galaxy. Councillor Varric, still angry and unwilling to accept the reality, slammed his fist on the table. "This is madness. We can't just let them take over. We have to stand and fight. We have fleets, strength in numbers." But his outburst was met with silence. The truth was, their fleets were decimated. The few ships left scattered in every direction. The humans had already shown what they could do to entire fleets with a single blast. And now, Varric realized, their old methods of war and dominance were useless against such power. Councillor Rillen, ever the voice of reason, spoke calmly. "We've already seen the result of resistance. Our fleets are scattered, and our allies are turning away. The truth is, we are powerless against them." The room was filled with tension as the councillors exchanged uneasy glances. Some were still hesitant to accept the inevitable, but others were beginning to see that humanity was not just another threat. It was a new order, one that could no longer be ignored. As the debate raged on, the galaxy itself was beginning to feel the shift. The news of humanity's rise was spreading quickly, reaching planets and species that had long been under the Council's rule. Some feared the new power, unsure of what it meant for their futures. Others, more pragmatic, began to make their own plans. On the planet Xaros, the same fleet that had approached the human warship months ago was now in full support of humanity. They had seen the writing on the wall. Aligning with the humans was the only way to ensure survival. But other planets, still loyal to the Council, weren't as quick to surrender. They were unsure, unwilling to give up the power they had held for so long. But the longer they hesitated, the more they realized that humanity wasn't asking for submission. They were offering something new, a place at the table, a chance to join a new order, but only if they were willing to adapt. Meanwhile, the human warship continued to patrol the galaxy, its presence a constant reminder of what had changed. Captain Reed, ever calm, watched as the galaxy responded to the growing influence of humanity. He knew that not all would submit willingly, but humanity's power was undeniable, and he was prepared to give the galaxy a choice: join humanity or be left behind. Back on the Council's home planet, the leaders were struggling to find a way forward. The once unified Council was now fractured, with factions forming both for and against the human presence. Some councillors believed that their only chance was to join humanity and become part of the new order. Others, led by Varric, still clung to the hope that they could turn the tide and reclaim their former glory. But the truth was clear to everyone in the room. The Council's power was fading, and humanity was rising in its place. The question wasn't whether the Council could survive, but whether the galaxy would accept humanity's new role as the dominant force. In the end, the only thing certain was that the galaxy was changing, and there was no turning back. The Galactic Council had ruled the galaxy for centuries, but now their time was ending. The once proud leaders, who had commanded the respect of countless species, now faced the undeniable truth: humanity had risen, and they were here to stay. Captain Mark Reed stood at the bridge of the human warship, watching the galaxy unfold before him. The massive warship, which had already changed the course of history, was now patrolling the once thriving space controlled by the Council. His mission was simple: ensure that humanity's rise was permanent, and that the Council understood that resistance was futile. The Council, after weeks of tense meetings, had finally made their decision. They had no choice but to accept humanity's dominance. The fleets that remained were now scattered, and their once unified voice had become fractured. Some members still argued for resistance, but the majority saw no way forward without aligning with humanity. The final meeting was set. The leaders of the Galactic Council, now divided and desperate, would meet with Captain Reed to formally discuss humanity's terms. The weight of this moment was not lost on anyone. The councilors knew that this would be the end of an era. As the council delegation arrived on the warship, their faces were grim. They had little left to offer, and they knew it. They had seen the power of the human warship, and they understood that they could not stand against it. Captain Reed stood at the front of the room as the councilors entered. His presence was calm but commanding, and there was no mistaking the shift in power. The council members, once so proud and confident, now appeared small in comparison to the human leader before them. "Welcome," Captain Reed said, his voice steady. "I trust we are all ready to move forward." The councilors exchanged nervous glances. They had no choice but to agree, but the decision did not come without resistance. Councillor Verak, who had fought the hardest to resist humanity's rise, spoke first. "We've lost," Verak said, his voice bitter. "I can admit that much, but we cannot just hand over everything. We've led this galaxy for millennia. We deserve a place in this new order." Reed's eyes narrowed. He had expected this resistance, but he wasn't willing to negotiate further. The galaxy had already seen the consequences of resistance. Humanity had proven its strength, and now it was time for the Council to accept the new reality. "You will have a place," Reed replied coldly. "But understand this. You will serve humanity now. You will work with us, or you will be swept aside. There is no other option." The room grew silent as the councilors absorbed his words. They were not used to being spoken to like this. For so long, they had been the ones giving orders, setting the terms. But now, they had no choice but to bow to humanity's will. Councillor Rillen, the voice of reason among them, spoke softly. "What will happen to us?" To the council. "The council's role is over," Reed said bluntly. "You can stay as advisors if you wish, but your influence is gone. This galaxy will now be governed by humanity. We will build a new order, one where power is not determined by old traditions, but by strength and respect." The councilors were left speechless. They had no response. The truth was undeniable. Their time had passed. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the meeting ended, Captain Reed stood tall. The warship, which had once been a symbol of humanity's emergence, was now a symbol of their dominance. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it all. The council had fallen, and there was no turning back. The new era had begun, and the galaxy would be forever shaped by humanity's strength, determination, and resolve. The council had been replaced, and the future belonged to humanity. The Galactic Council had fallen, and the galaxy had changed forever. Once, the council had been the ruling power, the voice of authority across the stars. But now, humanity's worship dominated the galaxy's skies, and the councilors, who had once held the reins of power, found themselves helpless to stop the rise of this new force. But what came next was not destruction. Instead, humanity sought to build. Captain Mark Reed stood in the command center of the warship, looking out at the stars. The warship had been humanity's tool to prove its strength, but now it was their tool to reshape the galaxy. The council had been forced to accept their new role, but now came the hard part: rebuilding the galaxy under humanity's rule. The first step was simple: restoring order. The fleets that once served the council were now under humanity's command. Many species that had once been loyal to the council quickly saw that aligning with humanity was the only way to ensure their survival. Some came to negotiate, eager to become part of the new order. Others, still wary, kept their distance, unsure of what humanity's rise truly meant for their future. Across the galaxy, a new structure began to form. Where there had once been chaos and division, there was now a chance for unity, but it was on humanity's terms. Captain Reed had seen to it that any remaining threats were dealt with swiftly. No one would challenge humanity's authority again. But the task ahead was not just about power. It was about diplomacy, too. While many species had quickly seen the benefit of aligning with humanity, others were not so easily swayed. Captain Reed and his officers worked tirelessly to establish a series of treaties, forging new alliances with those who understood that humanity's dominance was not a threat, but an opportunity. On the Council's homeworld, the once grand headquarters now stood empty, its halls silent. The leaders who had once walked those halls had either fled or been absorbed into humanity's new government. Some of the more stubborn counselors remained, now working as advisors to humanity, trying to come to terms with the new order they had no choice but to accept. As the new leadership took shape, Reed knew that they would have to balance power with respect. He was a soldier, trained to fight, but he understood that lasting peace would require more than just force. Humanity had already shown its strength. Now, it was time to show the galaxy that they could lead with wisdom as well. While the galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality, there were still challenges ahead. Resistance remained in some corners, though small and scattered. A few rebel groups, desperate to regain their former power, began to stir in the shadows. But these were nothing compared to the might of humanity's warship. Every move was calculated. Every decision weighed carefully. For now, however, the galaxy was at peace. The warship patrolled the stars, a constant reminder of humanity's strength. And as the new leaders of the galaxy worked to forge a future, the message was clear. Humanity was not just a fleeting power. They had arrived to stay. Captain Reed stood tall, looking out at the galaxy that was slowly coming under humanity's control. There was work to be done, yes, but humanity had proven itself. And now, it was time to rebuild the galaxy in its image. The old order was gone, and the new era was just beginning. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had ever imagined. Humanity, a race once looked down upon, now stood at the center of power. The Galactic Council, once the unquestioned authority, had crumbled in the face of a single warship. But despite the overwhelming force that had brought them to this point, humanity's true challenge lay in what came next. Captain Mark Reed watched from the bridge of the human warship as the stars passed by. The mission was far from over. Humanity had risen to dominate the galaxy, but now it was time to build something lasting. The old council had left its mark on the galaxy for centuries, but now it was humanity's turn to shape the future. Reed's thoughts were interrupted by the soft hum of the communications console. A message was incoming, and he knew it was important. His hands moved instinctively, bringing up the holographic display. It was a message from a distant planet, one of the last holdouts who had resisted humanity's rise. The Xarians, a race of proud warriors, had once been fiercely loyal to the Galactic Council. Now they were sending a message, a final attempt to align themselves with humanity. "I hope this message finds you well, Captain Reed," the voice began, and a familiar face appeared on the screen. It was Xarian Commander Celis, a leader who had fought against humanity's growing influence. But now his eyes held a different expression, one of respect. "Captain," Celis continued, "we've watched as the galaxy has shifted. The Xarians no longer stand alone. We're ready to join humanity. We offer our full support and wish to be a part of your new order. We've seen the strength you wield, and we know now that it is time for us to stand together." Reed paused, considering the message. The Xarians had been a powerful force in the Council's military, but now they were offering their loyalty to humanity. It was a sign that the galaxy was truly beginning to understand that humanity wasn't just a passing power. They were the future. "We welcome you, Commander Celis," Reed replied, his voice steady. "The galaxy will be stronger for it." As the communication ended, Reed turned to his officers. There was still work to be done, but this was another step in securing humanity's place at the top. The Xarians weren't the last to come around, and with each new alliance, humanity's influence spread further. Back on Earth, a new government was taking shape. Human leaders, once fragmented and divided, now stood united in their purpose, to govern not just Earth, but the galaxy. The warship that had once been a symbol of power was now a symbol of peace. Humanity had proven its strength, and now it was ready to build a lasting peace. But not all was easy. There were still those who resisted, remnants of the old council's supporters, scattered throughout the galaxy. They were isolated and weak, but they would not go away quietly. Humanity had made it clear. Resistance was futile, but they would offer peace to those who were willing to embrace the new order. As Captain Reed looked out at the stars once more, he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had done the impossible. They had risen, and they had dominated. But now, their true test was in the legacy they would leave behind. The galaxy had seen the power of humanity. The question was, how would they choose to shape the future? With a steady hand, Reed issued new orders. The work was far from over, but humanity had proven that it could lead. The galaxy was theirs to rebuild, and it would be rebuilt in humanity's image. A new era had begun. The legacy of humanity was no longer just a story of power. It was a story of transformation, unity, and the creation of a new order. And with that, the galaxy had truly entered a new age, one where humanity stood at the helm, ready to guide the stars into the future.